Hello and welcome to Y Media's exclusive interview with Gurratan Singh, who's reseeking election in Brampton East for the NDP. I'm your host, Ramona Singh, and always a pleasure to be with you. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Ramona. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I look forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So 2018 was the first time you were elected to the provincial government, and as an NDP in a PC wave, you were able to win that election. You were in opposition. The pandemic hit where you had to navigate around for your constituents. What was that first term like, and what did you learn?
It was a really tough first term, largely I would say, because at first we hit a really big onslaught of cuts from Doug Ford. Like right from the get-go, we saw him canceling our university in Brampton, voting against our motions to reduce car insurance, voting against expanding our health care. And then right after that, we had the pandemic. And we know that Brampton is one of the worst hit communities by the pandemic. And we saw there, once again, Brampton being left behind once again with lack of access to vaccines or just support in general. And Brampton was really, like small businesses to frontline workers, folks were really hurt badly by the pandemic. So it was really difficult in that sense to see that and then see that lack of action from the provincial government. But we kept on fighting, and there's always, I believe in having a joyful struggle perspective in life. So despite the hurdles we faced, the community mobilized incredibly well. They put together their own vaccine clinics, they put together their own support systems, and they persevered. So it was inspiring to see what Bramptonians can do when their back is literally up against the wall. But it was tough to see our city left behind.
There's a lot of similarities between you and your older brother, Jagmeet Singh, who's the leader of the NDP. I guess you're both lawyers by profession, you're both politicians, you're both NDP. What are some of the differences between you and him that people wouldn't know about?
It'd be a bit awkward if we weren't both NDP. It'd be like very uncomfortable dinner table conversations. My brother is someone who is just such a compassionate, empathetic, and caring person. He, people know the story. I encouraged him to get into politics because I saw something in him that many other people my age as well saw, that he sometimes didn't see in himself, the great capacity he has to be a leader. And it's born out of his deep love for people. I think the thing that I always like to describe with my brother and I is that we've often had this relationship where he would often have a big vision of something, and then I would kind of start breaking it down and say, okay, how do we make that happen? And so when it came to him being an MPP, or even during his leadership, a lot of it was him laying out this, a vision of of what he wants to see. And then a lot of the work I would do with him is kind of just breaking it down and saying, okay, let's look at it step by step. What are the different parts we can take? So I think the differences are, I think sometimes I can be a bit more, look at things a bit more in a pragmatic sense and how to actually execute. But he's so amazing in giving that direction of what to execute.
You just had a daughter. How did it change you as a person, becoming a father?
Yeah, becoming a father is the greatest experience ever in my life. It's so amazing. Someone said it to me, it's like when you have a kid, every day just gets better. And it's so true because, I'll give you an example. My wife popped by the office today, and I was driving in after doing a few meetings, and I saw her car, and I ran inside. I go, "Is Mahako here?" Like our daughter, and she wasn't, because my wife was there to pull vote and get to work, so she left it with her mother, with Maha's grandmother. But it just lets you see the world through the eyes of someone who is seeing everything for the first time. It makes you so appreciative for everything, and beyond everything, though, it actually makes me more committed to work even harder, because I do see the world my daughter is inheriting, and a world that's facing a lot of crises, from the climate crisis to inequity to instability around the world, and it makes me really motivated even harder to fight for a better community. She's being raised in Brampton, and I want Brampton to become better, even more so now, because every father, every parent wants better for their child, and better for my child means a better city.
Absolutely. Now, Brampton has been top of mind in this election. We've seen PC leader Doug Ford launch his campaign in Brampton. Andrew Horwath, the leader of the NDP, has come to Brampton many times with big promises. What will Brampton be like with an NDP government?
So we know that Brampton has been left behind for a long time. And for the past 4 years, Doug Ford has refused to act on the issues that matter most to Bramptonians, and Liberals had 15 years, and they failed to act as well. And when I door knock and I talk to folks, they tell me really clearly, I think there's like top 3 issues that folks in Brampton are facing. We're talking about our healthcare crisis, a healthcare crisis that existed prior to COVID-19. We're talking about the fact that we have an affordability crisis in housing and overall, from gas prices to car insurance and worse. And we have an issue of a terrible amount of traffic that folks are facing, and how their lives are being wasted behind a steering wheel when they could be at home or at work. And so a better Brampton under the NDP would look like this. Right now, there's only one city in all of Canada that has over 700,000 people and only one hospital. That's Brampton. And that's a result of inaction by Liberal and Conservative governments. The NDP, we would make sure that Brampton has 3 full-fledged hospitals. That means fully funding Brampton Civic into a hospital that has the funding it needs to operate fully, funding Peel Memorial and turning it from a health center to a full 24 hours hospital with an emergency room with 820 beds. And lastly, that means building a 3rd hospital. We'll make sure that folks in Brampton have the dignity to go to a hospital in their own community without having to have this conversation to say, maybe I should go to Georgetown, maybe I should go to Orangeville instead. That's wrong. We'll make sure that doesn't happen anymore. We'll make sure life is affordable for folks. And one of the ways we can do that is through fixing auto insurance, and specifically ending postal code discrimination in auto insurance. It's wrong. I talked to a family and they described to me how it's so wrong that they're being charged higher rates based on their postal code than their driving record. This is a family of 4 people. They drive affordable vehicles. They have no accidents, no claims collectively, and they pay more for car insurance than their household mortgage. And that's something that is just so unjust. We in the NDP will end postal code discrimination in car insurance. That'll save folks as much as $2,000 a year in car insurance. That's what we're committed to doing. And as we just announced last week, we know congestion is terrible across the board. And that's why we in the NDP will make sure that the 407 is free for truckers. That means we're going to shift between 12 to 22,000 trucks every single weekday off 400 series highways and onto the 407. This is going to immediately reduce traffic, save thousands of dollars for truckers, and make life easier for folks across the city.
Now, I think that Canada's a big country, and transportation between Eastern and Western Canada is either via rail or trucking. And if you give them, access to good insurance that's affordable, and make sure that transit routes are available, then goods will be cheaper for us, the consumers. Otherwise, it would have to be added on to the pricing that would get distributed to the consumers. So this is a big deal. The 407 free for truck drivers. Now, is this something that's going to be immediately in 2022, or how long will it be before that's allowed if there's an NDP government come June 2nd?
We will immediately work to implement this policy. So let's look at it from a bit of a background perspective. Right now, we know people are struggling with traffic across the GTA. And we also know that the 407 is this huge piece of infrastructure that's being really underutilized right now. We're talking about the fact that it's so empty that last year an airplane actually was able to land in the middle of the 407 in the middle of the day. And the 407 is owned by private owners, private operators, from not even a Canadian company. And they have within their lease a requirement to have a minimum amount of traffic on the 407. And if they don't meet this minimum amount of traffic, they are then penalized. And last year they were penalized $1 billion. And Doug Ford, for some reason, decided to forgive that $1 billion penalty, while at the same time he was cutting from our education, our healthcare, and more. So our plan is really simple. We're going to take the $1 billion, and we anticipate it's going to be more than that because those levels of traffic are still quite low. So we anticipate $1 to $2 billion right now. We're going to use that to subsidize and to make sure that the 407 is free for truckers. That's going to result in an immediate reduction in traffic. And we're talking about something like 12 to 22,000 trucks every single weekday that'll be shifted from 400 series highways and onto the 407. This is an immediate win for truckers. We're going to save thousands of dollars, and this is an immediate win for commuters across the GTA because all those trucks are going to be shifted over to the 407. We're going to utilize a piece of infrastructure that's in our province, and we're going to make life easier for folks across the board.
Talk to me about universal mental health, universal dental, universal pharmacare. These are revolutionary ideas. What does it mean for the average Ontarian who will have access to those?
Yeah, so when you talk about the fact that, let's talk about Brampton. There are folks in Brampton who are unable to afford a dentist right now. And you know what the very common story in Toronto, in Brampton is that people who live in Brampton will then go to either India, Punjab, Pakistan to get their teeth fixed because they can't afford it here. And that is completely unjust. And that's why we in the NDP, we released our plan to expand dental care and build off the hard work that Jagmeet did federally and expand it to households who make anything under $200,000. They'll be included in our plan to make sure that they have coverage for seeing the dentist. We talk about mental health care. We're talking about the largest expansion of mental health in Ontario's history is what we in the NDP are proposing. And we're going to make sure that people who need the mental health care get it when they need it. Because we know, especially during the pandemic, it was a very high percentage of folks who this issue of mental health came to the forefront further and further because that was one of the byproducts of this pandemic. And so we're talking about expanding mental health care and making sure people can get that support when they need it. Pharmacare as well. We all know these terrible stories of folks who cut their pills in half because they're unable to let their medication stretch. That shouldn't be the case. So we're going to make sure that folks can pay for their medication with their OHIP card and not their credit card. That's what we're fighting for.
And gas is really expensive now, over $2 a liter. And the PC said that they're going to cut the gas tax by 5.7% per liter. And that's from July 1st to 6 months. The Liberals said they'll uphold it if they form government. What is the NDP plan?
So when we talk about gas, we need to recognize that people are struggling right now, especially in Brampton. Like we're talking about between our lack of infrastructure, our percentage of truckers or taxi drivers, people in the transport industry, or the fact that students who need to commute either by car or otherwise, because of the lack of infrastructure in Brampton, people need a car to get around, or their job requires them to get around in a car. And people right now are struggling. Its levels of unaffordability are at incredibly high levels. And so we need to fix that. And one of the things we notice with gas particularly is that, you ever notice like on one side of Brampton, gas will be at $1.90, which is already incredibly high, and then another side will be at $2. Or right before the long weekend, like right now, we always see this big increase in gas prices. We know that big oil and gas is making huge profits right now. They're not struggling. They're making billions upon billions, these already billion-dollar companies. So what we're saying is very simple. There's the Ontario Energy Board, and right now they regulate products such as natural gas and hydro. We're going to include petroleum products under the Ontario Energy Board. They're going to regulate the cost of gas. They're going to make sure that gas is something that is consistent across the board, and we're going to stop these billion-dollar companies from gouging everyday Ontarians and charging them higher rates with no rhyme or reason. That's what we're here to fight for.
And that's going to be more of a permanent solution than what the other parties are talking about in terms of a 6-month relief?
Exactly, because when we look at the amount that they're promising, the reality is that gas prices fluctuate far more than that just because it's a weekend, or just because it's a Friday night, or it's a long weekend that's coming forward. We're saying that big oil and gas, they are gouging people. They are ripping off Ontarians. We need to stand up to these billion-dollar companies, and you can trust us in the NDP to stand up for them.
Unaffordability has been an issue, almost a crisis, which we've been talking about now, and that's the case for people who are working full-time with careers. I can't imagine what it's like for seniors on a fixed income. What is the NDP plan for seniors?
So there's a variety of things when we talk about how do we help our seniors. We talk about a deferral of property tax to help seniors save money and defer that to when they sell their home. We talk about the fact that seniors often need greater support and care, be it for access to medicine, dental, or otherwise. We talk about overall what seniors face through the pandemic and how our broken long-term care system demonstrated how seniors who built up our province were put in some of the worst areas and conditions because of the for-profit long-term care homes that really put seniors in deplorable situations. We in the NDP are fighting for a province that protects and honors our seniors. And that means giving them the ability to defer their property tax and save that money in their pocket till they sell their home. That means taking for-profit long-term care out of the picture, making sure we have public long-term care facilities that take care of seniors. That means having universal dental care so folks who are seniors have access to care that they need. Universal pharmacare, giving them the access to the medication that they need. It means making sure that seniors have the dignity to access services and age from home in the community if they so choose. So we're fighting for seniors across the board, and those are some of the things that we have proposed.
The Liberals have talked about a buck a ride province-wide, and that's projected in their plan for allocated budget for the rest of 2022 and 2023. What is the NDP plan to be able to address an affordability for one and transit?
So what we've talked about in the past, and something that we're fighting for now, is that traditionally the split between municipalities and the province was a 50-50 split with respect to the cost of transit, and that was slashed, and putting far more onus upon the municipalities. We want to restore it to a 50-50 split between province and between municipalities. That is going to provide municipalities with consistent funding that will allow them to provide better and more affordable transit to folks across the board. In addition, we're talking about very specific projects to address transit and how can we make life more livable for people. And things like Brampton needs an all-day two-way GO system. It shouldn't be that you can only jump on a train in the morning to Toronto from Brampton and then back home in the evening. Similar to other routes, we need to get that ability and that accessibility. That's going to reduce traffic because you need to have more commuters on trains as opposed to in cars, and it's going to create a more livable community. So these are some of the things that we're implementing to make sure we have a better transit system in our province.
And when it comes to education, what is the NDP plan compared to the other parties for education?
So when we talk about education, you have to understand that public education is a pillar in our province, and we need to do everything possible to uphold public education. But we really can't trust the Conservatives and Liberals to do that. The Conservatives, since getting elected, Doug Ford has had a very clear agenda to attack public education. And most recently, we saw, I believe, a $1.3 billion cut being brought in to education over the past couple of years. And it's really devastated teachers. And we've seen the impact that it's had across the board. We need more education workers, we need more teachers, we need to make sure that they're getting the support that they need. And so we in the NDP have said a few things. We would hire more education workers and teachers. We would make sure we're funding our public schools appropriately, not cutting from them. We'd make sure that the backlog of repairs that existed under the Liberals and was continued under the Conservatives is finally fixed up, and we're repairing our schools. We'd make sure that we're capping class sizes at 24, 26, depending on the specific age groups, to make sure that teachers had the ability to provide the best education to students. We are here to fight for public education, and that's why I'm honored for the fact that we received the endorsement of the Ontario Secondary Students Teacher Federation, OSSTF, and they've recognized that we want to fight to protect education, and they gave us the support because we know we got their back, and we have the families of Ontario and students, we have their back as well.
For the voter that's hearing from you today, talk about universal dental, universal pharmacare, universal mental health, 3 hospitals in Brampton, making the 407 free for truckers right away. There's so much that's being offered under this platform, the relief when it comes to tax burden for seniors. Now, the question is, how will the NDP pay for it all?
So a lot of this is we have to ask this question as well. How can you not afford to invest in healthcare? Brampton is a city of over 700,000 people, and we need to make sure, just like how Mississauga has 3 hospitals, just like how Hamilton has more than 3 hospitals, we need 3 hospitals in Brampton. And we're at over 700,000 today. We're going to be at 1 million soon. Brampton's the 9th largest city and the fastest growing.
I think it's already at 1 million when you calculate all the people who like maybe have other apartments within single dwelling homes that are probably not
A lot of people
counted.
make this assertion, and
Yeah.
it's true. Like there's a bit of ambiguity there. So there's a question there to say, if you're not investing in a healthcare system, the cost of that is a huge burden. When we talk about auto insurance, that's actually just curbing the cost of billion-dollar car insurance companies who are making money off our back. That's just making sure that the gouging ends. When we talk about bringing down the cost of gas, that's stopping billion-dollar big oil and gas companies from gouging us as well. When you talk about the 407 being made free, it's talking about, once again, another foreign-owned huge company who owes us money, using their money to help make life better for people across Ontario. So there's a huge component of the investment that's coming from there. And in general, we always believe in the NDP that those who have a lot, the multi-billionaires, the incredibly wealthy, they need to give a little bit more to make sure that everyone can have a better life. And we believe on looking to those multi-billion-dollar super rich people to give a little bit more to make sure we can all have a little bit more services and a better life.
So now I'm going to get a little personal. What is Gurratan Singh's future plans, and how does that impact the lives of people around him and the community at large?
My future plans are always, I guess, the plans that I've had in the past 4 years. I'm here to fight for Brampton. I've been fighting for the past 4 years. I've always, let people know that over the past 4 years, I raised the issue of auto insurance over 60 times since being elected in Parliament. I put 2 bills forward on the issue of auto insurance. When you talk about healthcare, I raised this issue over 150 times in the legislature, along with all the motions and issues we put forward in the House and in the Parliament. My job is to continue to fight for Brampton until Brampton gets its fair share. And I'm not going to stop until that happens. So I'm committed to fighting for Brampton, and my hope is that the people of Brampton give us the support so we can form government and implement this change and fight for a better life for folks across the board.
You're super popular. You have an online following. You have about 30,000 Twitter followers, 30,000 plus. You have 25,000 plus Facebook followers. You have 86,000 plus Instagram followers. So you're pretty well known. What is something that people don't know about you that you can share with us today?
I guess, people don't know, it's something that my brother talks a lot about, but I haven't talked about it as much. So my brother and I, we both used to train in martial arts together. So like he talks a bit more, his background in jiu-jitsu and boxing and kickboxing. So I used to train with him as well. So it's like the one sport that I'm okay at. I wasn't very good at sports growing up, but the one sport that randomly I really enjoyed was like boxing and kickboxing and grappling and wrestling. So that's just a cool thing that my brother's into, and people don't realize that we used to be training partners together. And I love baking. Ask my wife; she'll tell you I love to bake. And my favorite dessert to make is called pudding chômeur, which is this Quebecois bread pudding. It's delicious. So.
Well, make sure you post the recipe.
I have. It's already there. I posted it a few times. Yeah.
Great.
It's already. Check it out. I already have a few of my recipes online.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. Any final words to the audience, the viewers, listeners, and members?
Yeah. So I guess this is my last message, and is this. Brampton's been left behind for a long time. And over the past 20 years, we've had liberals and we've had conservatives. And their failure for Brampton is very apparent. Our city only has one hospital for over 700,000 people. People are struggling, paying car insurance and gas prices that are unaffordable, and traffic is getting worse and worse. We need a change in Brampton, and we need a change in Ontario. So I'm asking folks to get out there and vote for the NDP in this election. In every single seat across Brampton, across Peel, across Ontario, let's bring in a government like the NDP that's here to fight for you, to stand up for you and make sure that communities like Brampton have the health care we need, the affordable lives we need, and the ability to get around when we need to get around. So that's my ask. My name is Gurratan Singh. I'm your NDP candidate for Brampton East, and I hope to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you. This was a Y Media exclusive interview with Gurratan Singh, the NDP candidate in Brampton East. Till next time, stay well and take care. Thank you.